Welcome back to the Graveyard, everybody. My name is Mads, and today is going to be a nice, chill, laid-back video. I am beginning my playlist called Spooky Sleepover, which is where, as the title suggests, I'm going to treat you as though you've come over to my house for a sleepover. So I'm going to show you a nice little snack that I got my hands on, and we're going to tell some ghost stories. I decided that for the first video in this playlist, it was probably for the best if I told my own ghost story rather than scouring the internet trying to find somebody else's. And then later on we can do things like have you guys submit some spooky stories you want to tell me about your own lives or your own experiences, or if you found some cool ones online, we'll tell those too. So let's start with the snacks. I treated myself to a smoothie bowl. Pretty excited about that. It looks really, really good. It was called the Stupid Cupid. It's by Playables. It's like a little chain around here. And it's got coconut flakes and cacao nibs and strawberry and stuff. And it's just gonna be delicious, I think. I can't wait. My tummy's grumbling already. And for the drink, I've got a coffee smoothie. I believe this one was called like a New Orleans or something. It's another like coconut based one. And no worries for anyone who's like, oh god, I hate mukbangs with a passion. I do too. I just have this stuff because that's the kind of thing you would do at a sleepover anyway, is like have snacks together and stuff. I am not going to be making gross loud slurping noises on video or anything. No worries there if that freaks you out. But I'm gonna do a little taste testy. It tastes like the blended version of like an Elvis sandwich, like peanut butter and banana and stuff on a sandwich. I don't even know if there's peanut butter in it, but that's just what it reminds me of. I'm gonna make a huge mess with this. It's over for my couch. Alright, so before we get into the story itself, there's something I want to explain about myself and spiritual activity. I very strongly believe in spiritual activity, ghosts, anything that you personally like to call it. I believe that there are spirits among us. I don't think you necessarily have to go to any specific places in the world to experience a haunting. Yes, some places may have stronger spiritual activity depending on what that place's history is, but think for a minute about how old planet Earth is and how long humanity has existed on it. Everywhere is haunted. Every square inch of this planet is haunted. You just have to take the time to reach out to the spirits in that particular area. Now, I am also someone who is spiritually gifted. I have always been like that, and it's kind of funny because I grew up in a Catholic household, and I mean Catholic, like observing every holy day, making sure that you're at church every single weekend, even if you're not feeling well and stuff, going to Catholic school, all of that. I'm not even close to Catholic now. I'm actually pagan and a practicing witch, which happens a lot. But for all of those facts, the fact that I believe in spiritual activity and that I'm gifted in it, I've always been able to experience spiritual activity. Even when I was a small child and my mother would try to wave off and be like, oh, it's just your imagination. You have a very active imagination. I knew the difference as a child between something being my imagination and hearing it in my head and hearing it with my ears. Like, kids know the difference. And kids themselves are more in tune with spiritual activity than most adults are because a lot of us lose that gift over time if we're not using it. It's like anything else. Like, stop practicing an instrument. You're not going to be as good at it when you pick it back up in a few years, you know? All that to say, I do still have a healthy dose of skepticism within me, because I also believe strongly in science and scientific advancements and stuff. And when it comes to things like ghost hunting YouTubers, for example, I think all of us should be a little bit more skeptical, not necessarily nasty, not necessarily like not believing anybody's experiences, but let's think of specific situations for a minute. Let's think of any ghost hunting show you've ever seen in your life. Let's think of any ghost hunting YouTuber you've ever seen in your life. What do? They go to a place they are unfamiliar with. A place usually they've never been to, or if they have been there, they haven't been there often enough to like fully know the groundwork or anything. They might know the history and stuff in like one building. That's it though. They also choose a place usually that has some huge traumatic event happen, like murders or something, or mass genocide, something absolutely horrible like that. And then what else do? They go there at like 3 in the morning and they split up their group. So no more than like 2 people at a time are in the same place. Think of what that does to the human psyche for a minute. Whether you believe in ghosts or not, even if you're the biggest skeptic on the planet and you think spiritual activity is all bullshit and stuff, if you put yourself in a situation where you are in an environment you're unfamiliar with, it's not your home, it's nothing that you know that much about, you've split from your group, and it's the middle of the night, human evolution is going to kick in. Human evolution has allowed the human species to remain on planet Earth because we know how to go about self-preservation. We know that if it's the middle of the night, we need to be on high alert. Our brain, no matter how brave a person you are, I don't care if you're like an ex-Navy SEAL, your brain will automatically be on high alert in the middle of the night because it's dark, so people can be lurking around. And if you're on unfamiliar ground at nighttime, anything could happen. It doesn't mean you're a coward. It doesn't mean you're scared of ghosts or anything. It just means your brain is like, we're going to kick in to anxiety gear to keep you safe so that you're on high enough alert that if you hear anything strange or if you think you see anything strange, you will be able to go into fight or flight right away and hopefully remain okay in that situation. So 9 times out of 10, when you're watching these videos back of people discussing their spiritual activity experiences and stuff, they're freaking out, and you either like hear or see nothing, or you're like, that could definitely be explained away. Like they'll see a shadow or something, they'll play it back, be fully insistent, like, look, that shadow only came when I said, like, Alexander, please show us a sign if you are anywhere in the vicinity and stuff. And it showed up right then. And it's like, well, honey, you've got, like, ring lights with you and shit, and, like, filming equipment. Plus, the moon? Shit's bouncing all over the place light-wise. So, that could have been anything. So, I don't dismiss shadows, but I'm very, very careful about which shadows look like their actual spiritual activity and which ones are literally just a shadow. And then, there's also sounds. Most of the time, they're not, like, out in a field or something, unless they're in, like, Gettysburg or something. Usually, they're in some old building that's been abandoned and left to rot for decades, if not hundreds of years. It makes sounds. Like, I don't care what time of day you're there, it's gonna make weird sounds, it's gonna have banging noises and stuff, and some things are simply a coincidence. I only believe something is pure spiritual activity if I cannot dismiss it in any other way. If I cannot dismiss it as, that was just old pipes, or that was just a regular shadow because some dude was walking by and it just happened to be good timing. Like, I have like a mental checklist of, let's make sure it can't be anything that can be rationally explained first. But I've had plenty of experiences where all of that's been checked off and spiritual activity still went down. I want to tell you a kind of happy sort of batch of stories, I guess, about one attachment that I've had since I was 6 years old. I call him Eric. He seems to enjoy that. I believe that there have been supernatural creatures that have existed on this planet since long before we did, and that they were never human, they were never anything even remotely human, and it is difficult, if not impossible, for us as human beings to ever fully comprehend exactly what they are. I don't even know if we're supposed to fully know what they are, but I think Eric is one of these things, because they almost feel sometimes like he's trying to behave in a human manner, but he doesn't quite get there. My first ever experience with him was wholly positive. So, when I was 6 years old, I lived in a historic home in like a kind of suburban downtown type of area. Unfortunately, I didn't understand this when I was 6 because it wasn't appropriate for my parents to explain this to me this way, but there was a lot of like gang-related violence and stuff going down in the area I lived in. I mean, it got bad enough there was an actual shooting that occurred right behind our house. So my parents were like, as much as we love our neighbors, love the area itself, absolutely adored the house. They did not want to leave that house behind at all. They always say if there had been any way to transplant that house onto the land they're currently on, they would have. But they were like, we've got small children. We need to get out of here. This is dangerous. And we moved, like, I think an hour or so outside of that area to a fully rural house. 10 acres of land, an old farm, and a house from, like, the 70s. So totally different way of life. And my parents were like, well, I'm the oldest. And like I said, I was only, like, 6. And they were like, well, we don't want this to be scary. We don't want the reason we're moving to be scary for the kids, and we don't want them to be scared of being in a new place. So what they would do is do little sleepovers in the house leading up to when we fully moved in. And I think it was on like weekends or something. Like I said, I was pretty young, so I don't remember all the details, but there was one point where there was absolutely no furniture in the house at all. Not even a chair yet. Totally empty house. And my sisters and I were going to be sharing a room. So what my mom did was she just pulled out some sleeping bags, poured them out onto the bedroom floor. I was like, oh, a sleepover, isn't it cool? And the closets, they were those like, not like regular open and shut door, the ones that like kind of fold out, you know what I mean? And they just happened to be open, probably because the people who lived there before were just pulling the stuff out of the closet and everything. It's a very bright room. Right outside the window of it, you can see light coming in from the shed, and it had very light colored wallpaper and flooring in it. So we weren't scared at all. We were excited. We're like, yeah, we get to do a sleepover in the new house. This is so cool. And we're just chit-chatting and stuff until my sisters fall asleep and I'm still very awake. I've always been an insomniac. I'm terrible at sleeping. So I'm awake. I'm happy. I'm having fun. I believe I could hear that my parents were still definitely awake and just chatting. Good vibes all around. And I look into the empty closet, which is the same color as the rest of the room, so brightly colored, and I clearly see a guy. He is more or less like a masculine humanoid shape, but it's almost not like he's full silhouette, almost like he's in like low lighting. And he's sitting cross-legged on the floor, and he's wearing a hat. And also, I know what people are gonna go, the Hat Man. I had never heard of the Hat Man at this point. I didn't hear of the Hat Man until I was an adult, actually, and all I heard were negative stories about him, so I don't think he's the Hat Man. But I understand why people have mistaken him for it since I said he was wearing a hat. But he was just chilling there, and all I got as little me was good vibes off him. So, I just like, hi, at the closet. Like, oh, I have a friend in the new room, cool. That was my first experience with Eric. As I was growing up in that house, when I was still like a young kid, I would like bump into him in the narrow hallway or something. And I would physically feel like when you bump into somebody, not like in the movies where they like float through you and go right through you and oh, it's so spooky. It would feel like someone bumped into me and I'd be like, oh, hi. Or he'd just be hanging out mostly in that bedroom. And I would just hi at him really happily, have no problem with him being there. Well, there was a point where the experience with Eric intensified. I had a pretty strained relationship with my mother for a while, especially because when I was pretty young, I was starting to question my faith. I was starting to question my faith pretty heavily, and one of the things that was getting on my nerves was that every time I tried to ask a faith-based question, the adults in my life would get angry with me. They would refuse to answer, and I'd be like, you don't ask questions about God. You don't ask questions about your faith. That is showing that you don't really believe in him and your faith isn't strong enough. And I'm like, but surely if you give me the answers I'm seeking, I'll have stronger faith than any of you. How can I follow a faith if I don't understand big pockets of it? It wasn't like it was just my mom. Like I said, like every adult in my life was the same way. They're just like, you don't question it, you don't ask questions at all. Stop it immediately. Okay. So I started kind of opening myself up spiritually. And I was just like, I wish that there was like something out there just to explain to me that like there's more than just life. Like there's something after life, there was something before life, all that stuff. But that would actually answer my questions. And I look out, and we have deep woods in my parents' backyard that also belong to them. And I see a beautiful buck out there. And all of a sudden, it's like, I don't know if you've ever used your third eye. It's almost like seeing through a projector. You don't see something necessarily solid, like how I'm sitting right here talking to you right now. Like I said, the best I can explain is it's like seeing a projected image. And the stag became a man, but he still retained some like deer-like features. Antlers, the nose shape, stuff like that. And I didn't feel anything negative at all. I was captivated, I was transfixed, I felt a sense of calm I'd never felt in my entire life, especially not when I was at church. And I was just like, I want to reach out to my spirit friend. And I was like, Eric, can you tell me who the guy was that I saw outside in the woods today? And very, very clearly, in my ear, not in my head, I heard a man's voice say, at about this level of volume and stuff, everything. He's everything. And I was like, this is amazing. This is beautiful. This is wonderful. Well, I started doing some research and finding out that there's quite a few ancient gods that took on deer-like appearances. So I started studying that and realizing that little me was pagan. And unfortunately, I had to keep a lot of that secret from my mom because she was still in this headspace where anything that's not Christian is evil and witchcraft is evil. And it's like, listen, hon, a prayer is a spell. Going to church, it's a ritual. It's all witchcraft. Like, if I'm not utilizing it with the intent to hurt someone, don't worry about it so much. It's making me finally happy. It's answering my spiritual questions I've always had. A lot of my mental health issues at the time were clearing up. As I got closer to it, there was nothing wrong here. And it was kind of funny because, well, not funny, but you know what I mean. I didn't have a lot of friends, but every so often, I would spend the night at one friend's house, and we'd just hang out, watching anime, drawing art and stuff together. I went to her house for a weekend. When I came back, I look at my room, and it's empty. Completely empty. There is just a Jesus bust on my end table, a lamp, a bed, a couple of pairs of jeans, and a couple of t-shirts with like American flags. Nothing that was me. Nothing that represented me in any way. And I kind of freaked out and panicked and was like, where is all my stuff? And she went on a tirade about how she thought that the stuff that existed in my room, the type of art that I was drawing, the tarot cards, anything pagan, any of that stuff was making my mental health worse, and she got rid of it so nothing bad could happen to me. And this is a big problem with people who are, it's so hard to say this and not sound excessive. This is a big problem with people who are very, very devout to their faith, and their faith is always number one in their life. They start treating the human beings in their life like shit and not even realizing it. They honestly think they're helping you. They honestly think they're doing what's best for you and for your soul. But this is the thing. This is how I feel about it. My soul isn't your business or your concern. I'm living my life the way I want to. I'm living in a way that when I am on my deathbed, I will have absolutely no regrets. So stop worrying about me. Worry about your own soul. Worry about your own life and what you're doing, because your faith is your own. It is not mine. We don't have to share beliefs to both be good people. Well, around the time she's like stealing all my pagan shit, and in some cases even throwing it away, things start happening around the house when I clearly know that Eric is around. Suddenly, my mom's pitching fits because her keys are missing, and she is very, very strict about where she puts stuff. She never misplaces anything. Everything has a specific place that it exists, and it never moves from there. She has it down to such a science, she doesn't even think about it. It's like she walks in, puts her key on the hook, keeps walking, doesn't even remember she did it. The key would literally just vanish. She'd be like, did you move the key? I'm like, why would I move the key? I can't fucking drive. What would I be doing with your car key? And we're looking everywhere. We're the only ones in the house. All of a sudden, when she would calm down at some point during the day and start treating me like a human being again, the keys would magically be back on the hook, and I could feel someone laughing. And I'm like, Eric, you're gonna get me in trouble. There was a point where I was in college, and I was just in the hallway to do my homework between classes, and this guy was basically sexually harassing me. There's no other way to explain it. He was being disgusting, and I had one of those big shoulder bags, really heavy, had all my books in it for the day, sitting right next to me, and this guy wouldn't fucking stop. It got a point where he even called the police on me to try to claim that I was a problem, but that's a story for another day. And the police, as usual, were completely useless in this situation. And the next time the guy came back through the hallway, I was just sitting there glaring at him. I would refuse to talk. I would just be like, what? You know? And as he's trying to walk a little closer to me, my shoulder bag, I shit you not, flies out toward his leg and trips him. And he's just looking at me like, what the fuck did you do that for? And I'm like, bitch, you're looking right at me. My hands are on my laptop. I didn't touch anything. You know? And again, it was weighed down by books. So this is one of those instances, like I said, that like science can't really explain it. It's not like there was a tornado outside that could have moved it. It just moved, and it kicked this guy's ass. And I didn't get bothered by him again after that, because I think it was just too weird for him. And, yeah, so I had experiences like that. I always have, where he will help me out in some capacity. Someone's doing something to me that Eric does not like, and he won't like overtly hurt them. He's not malicious. He doesn't want to do anything harmful to people. He's just like, I'm gonna teach you a little lesson here and how not to be an asshole. I've also had some funny experiences. So I mentioned he's an attachment. Obviously, from like the college story and stuff, he follows me around. He predominantly enjoys existing in that old bedroom at my parents' house, but he will follow me places. The first time I left the country, besides Canada, I went to the UK to spend 3 months with my best friend who lives there. And he was like somewhat open, but mostly like kind of skeptical, like never really gave it a second thought. But there was a day that we felt something, and he was like, I don't know how to explain this to you. It's like you're a beacon for ghosts. They just like show up when you're around. I don't know how to explain it. It's just the way it is. And I was like, oh, you don't have to tell me twice. I'm very aware of that. It's how it's always been. And I was doing automatic writing from a spirit in his house at the time. I didn't know what that was. I'd never done it in my life. I had no spiritual advisors who explained what automatic writing was. I was just like, the spirit's name was Andrew. Andrew wants a notepad, and he was like, okie dokie. And I just started writing stuff, and he was like, this is not what your writing looks like. That's not your handwriting. This isn't the way that you speak. What the hell? And I'm like, yeah, and I don't remember writing any of that. I kind of went to like a trance state and did it. And then that night, since my best friend was getting more open to spiritual activity, we're laying down in bed together in the top corner of the room. I look over, and he looks stunned, and I was like, you okay, dude? Like, did you have a nightmare or something? He's like, am I hallucinating? And I'm like, what? And he was like, in the top corner of the ceiling, it looks almost like a mass of black fog clouds or something, and like tendrils coming out of it. What the fuck? And I look up and I see the exact same thing he's seeing, clear as day. And I was like, oh, that's Eric. And he was like, could you tell him it's lovely to meet him? I have no problem with him being in my house as long as you are, but could he make it so I don't have to see him anymore? And I was like, sure. Eric, tone it down. Immediately, he's invisible. Which was interesting. So he's just always been there. Even when I moved out of my parents' house, I live an 8-hour drive away from them. And one day my mom, who always denies any spiritual activity because she's like, no, it's got to be demons. It has to be something bad. And she always dismissed Eric as just being my imagination, even when I was an adult. She calls one day because she's redoing my old bedroom as a guest room. And she was on like a stepladder painting. And she was like, could you tell your friend to not freak me out? And I was like, what? And she was like, yeah, I finally experienced him because I was in the house alone. It was the middle of the day, brightly lit room. I'm on the stepladder painting, and all of a sudden, like, I didn't see anything, I didn't hear anything. I just knew someone was there, and I would turn around, and I was kind of creeped out, but I couldn't see anybody anywhere. And it's when I was covering up the painting I put on your wall of the Virgin Mary. I just kept feeling it, and it just freaked me out. And I was like, you didn't do anything bad, right? And she was like, no, don't feel very wanted. I was like, well, I need the time to open this conversation up. To be clear, since then my mom's grown a lot. She's still very Catholic, but she understands that it's okay if I'm a different religion than her. It's okay if I live a different lifestyle than she does. She understands better now. That doesn't mean I'm a bad person. That religion shouldn't dictate if you're a good or bad person. Your personal morals should, and how you live your life. She has come a long way. I don't want anyone like attacking her in the comments or anything. But this kind of opened the floor to that because I was like, it's interesting that happened when you were covering up the Virgin Mary painting you put on my bedroom wall, because I wasn't a Christian person. I had to spend years in the presence of a deity I wasn't comfortable with. Think of like how uncomfortable you as a Catholic would be if you had to spend decades in a bedroom with a statue of Baphomet that you couldn't remove. Like, you would have been pretty weirded out. And that's not to like say anything bad about that religion at all. I have plenty of Christian friends and family members who are really nice people. That shouldn't have been there though. And I was like, my guess is, since you have to kind of teach you little life lessons and stuff about how you were treating me, is that he noticed you were covering up religious ideology, and he just wanted to let you know, like, hey, I'm still keeping an eye out on you. I know this religion was used to hurt my friend. Don't do it again. Don't do it again. But yeah, that's the story of Eric. He's still around, but he's never malicious anything bad like that. I love having him around. I invite him to be my attachment, as much as I know some people don't like that. Why would I not want him to be attached to me, though? He's made my life infinitely better with every experience I've had with him. I mean, I hope that you enjoyed this little spooky sleepover, but let me know if you've had a really positive experience with an attachment before in your lifetime, or if you want me to tell a ghost story that is from your life. You're more than welcome to mention in the comments below, or if you want, you can send a story to this email right here, and as long as I have permission, just tell me if you want to be anonymous or if you want me to say who you are, and I'll gladly tell your ghost stories as well. But until next time, do something that makes you happy today, so long as it's causing harm to no one else, and I'll see all of you again soon. Goodbye for now.